to another episode of the All-Star Advocacy Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Castro. Today, we have a super special guest joining us. He is a San Diego native. He is actually a dual citizen, U.S. and Italian. He is also the host of the Soccer Soup podcast, which was formerly the BS or BSI podcast.
Yeah.
And he is the captain of our USL soccer team here in town, the San Diego Loyal. He played his high school sports at Patrick Henry. He played for the UCLA Bruins during college, played for the U18, U20 men's national team, played overseas in the Bundesliga, and for various MLS clubs, the Chivas, the Timbers, Sporting KC, Red Bulls, and Atlanta United. And this past year, signed with our local team, the San Diego Loyal, who I follow closely, and really proud to call myself a fan from day one, really. So it's my pleasure to welcome on the podcast, Mr. Sal Zizzo. What's going on, Sal?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm ready to talk it up with you guys, so let's go. Let's do it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, thank you so much for making the time, to speak with us. I know you guys right in the heat of preseason and getting ramped up for what is to be another, great year. And, hopefully with, restrictions getting, easier and easier, with fans coming and rooting on your games. We just can't wait to watch you guys out there on the pitch.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, one of the reasons why I was so excited when I signed here was to be able to play in front of friends and family. So that first game that we were able to get in right before kind of the world ended right there was pretty special. Our first home game against Las Vegas, sellout, and then like I said, COVID hit. So since then, we haven't been able to play in front of fans. On some of the road games, we've had a few fans here and there. But yeah, nothing's going to be like, getting the fans back in, at USD Stadium and Torero Stadium. I think at the start, we're going to start with a few, I think 20% capacity or 33 now. And then, hopefully if all keeps going to plan, June 15th, we'll go full throttle. So super excited.
Cannot wait. Can't wait. I'll be there with my gear.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come find me. Before we get, too heavy into kind of present day, I would love to just catch our listeners up to who is Sal and kind of start from the beginning, kind of your upbringing. And so obviously knowing you went to Patrick Henry, just love to know what were those formative years like for you growing up here in San Diego. What did your childhood look like? I know you have Italian parents, is that correct?
Yeah, so kind of bringing it all back. Yeah, my both my parents were born in Sicily, so grew up pretty fairly traditional Italian. Big family first, big family gatherings, tons of food. I have uncles who are pretty prominent in San Diego in the restaurant business. If you've ever been to Barbusa restaurant in Little Italy, and
yes,
Nonna. So my cousins run those, and my uncle is owner, and we I've family life, food has always kind of been a big thing in my life. Like I said, a big traditional Italian family, and with that, soccer, right? So soccer is big in the Italian culture, and so growing up in San Diego, I would play up a few ages with my cousins. I have 30 cousins that all live in San Diego, surprisingly, and a lot of boys around my age. So we all played kind of rec soccer, just the rec soccer growing up. I was 5 years old, 6 years old, and I was playing up with like 7, 8 year olds with them. Always kind of like that young, aggressive one out of all of them. And then, as they got older, a lot of them kind of faded away in soccer and maybe stuck to baseball or whatnot. And I played baseball as well, but soccer was always kind of my go-to. I like to run around. I was a fast little kid, and so basically when they quit, I just kind of kept up with it. And then that's when I wasn't until like I was 9 or 10 when I started playing like competitive competitively, as they would say, travel soccer at the time. And I actually went to Crusaders Soccer Club, so I played there for like 2 years. And just the improvement from that little short stint. I went from being just a guy making the team, happy to make the premier team for the 9-10-year-olds, and then becoming one of the better players, and then needing to maybe challenge myself. So I went to a different club, San Diego, or I guess El Cajon Hotspurs USA.
I played for the Hotspurs as well.
And there you go. Yeah.
Right after you.
Yeah. So I was there. I went there for a few years and played my age, and then there was an even better team around my age playing up in age. So I went and played up in age with the likes of Marvell Wynn, who is also from Poway. His dad played Major League Baseball. He was actually at UCLA as well. So we kind of grew up together, and there was a few other players on that team that ended up playing pro. So that was a really cool experience. And it wasn't until probably I was 16. So I would say, freshman, I made varsity at Patrick Henry, and I thought that was, a pretty good accomplishment. Every freshman kind of, you teeter on the edge, you want to make varsity. And so I did. And then, after that freshman year, I had a pretty good year. And as people may not know, but high school soccer isn't kind of what scouts are ever looking at for soccer. It's unlike baseball where scouts for colleges will go heavily off their high school numbers or how they do in high school, and in football, and maybe even in basketball. Maybe not so much in basketball, but more so in football and baseball. So high school, but at the same time, a lot of kids nowadays don't play high school soccer, and I kind of think that sucks, to be honest, because I really enjoyed playing with the friends that I grew up with, that I grew up with in my neighborhood, and I went to school with, playing on a soccer field with them, and having those Friday night games with your closest friends. So it's unfortunate that now there's certain rules with academies and U.S. soccer and this and that that they don't allow it, but it sucks. But I mean, like I said, it was one of my fondest memories of growing up was playing at Patrick Henry, and after that, then I was playing club soccer in the off season and throwing on my baseball jersey and playing in games after, and it was just back and forth kind of, because I was playing varsity baseball as a sophomore, a little bit as a freshman, but mainly as a sophomore, junior, senior. We went to the finals my sophomore year at Tony Gwynn Stadium. We lost to El Capitan my sophomore year. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we lost in Tony Gwynn Stadium against El Cap. Yeah. So in that year we had a good team. We had a few guys that played college, and a guy Nate Bowman at the time. Actually, he was the stud on our team, and lefty. I think he played baseball at USD and ended up getting drafted a little bit, but he had some arm injuries. But baseball was a really cool experience, but I think growing up, I just kind of knew soccer was, it was pretty level with baseball up until I started getting called into like youth national team camps and regional camps, and at the time it was called Olympic Development Program. Mm-hmm. Once I was doing that, it just kind of took over my passion, my life. I loved getting the ball and running, in the sense that like, a running back would in the NFL. Just kind of, where baseball, you don't really get that, like,
it's a slower game.
Yeah, it's just a slower game. It's a thinking, it's, less cardio, and not that I don't mind that part of it, but but I just enjoyed it. Yeah, I just enjoyed dribbling and going at guys and stuff like that. So yeah, I stayed in soccer. UCLA approached me. Yeah, I had lots of interest. I think I went on an official visit to Santa Clara University. I went to USD on an official visit, and I went to the last one I went to was Cal Berkeley. So, and then UCLA. So I went to all these schools, and to be honest, at the time, I always wanted to challenge myself, and soccer UCLA was it was top notch at the time. It was the top level, and as a freshman, that going into that type of environment, it's what I wanted. A lot more players were turning pro from that school year in and year out. And so I just thought it was the best chance to kind of get me to that next level. So decided to go there. Had a good freshman year.
Just to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
The scouting process out of high school to UCLA, that was mainly because of, your club, type
yes.
Games and statistics. And that's how they were you were getting looks. Is it wasn't really through, the high school is kind of more, you're getting both worlds with your friends and it was great.
Yeah.
Memories, right. But it was at that time, that's how, they knew who you were.
Yeah, high school, like I said, it was fun. I was scoring, I was getting accolades, all CIF this, CIF that. But at the end of the day, there's college scouts aren't looking at who's making the CIF first team. They can just look at, are they getting called into the Olympic development program? Were they on the Cal South team? Were they on the regional team? Were they getting games with the U17 national team, the U18 national team? So I think a lot more, at least the top, coaches in the country, top schools where you're getting a lot of that talent, that's where they're going. I'm sure there's coaches that are on the lower levels that are looking at, high school soccer and whatnot. But yeah, at the time it was cool. It was a bit overwhelming getting a lot of, letters as a junior from nearly every college I could imagine. There was getting letters from Harvard and this and that, and I knew I didn't have the brain for Harvard, but yeah, it was cool. I think actually at my parents' house, he still has in the filing cabinet all the letters, and I was looking at them the other day. It was pretty funny, but no, went with UCLA. It couldn't have been a better choice. You're constantly around guys that have played at the professional level, teammates that all strive to be a professional.
And the facilities. Let's talk about
the facilities.
Coming out of high school to
absolutely, yeah. So UCLA, it has the number one. In all sports, it's got the most national championships for any school. So, I love being a Bruin, as they say, and I still have a lot of pride in that for sure. But yeah, and I after my freshman year, I had a good freshman year, Pac-12 freshman of the year at the time. Kind of riding this wave a little bit, right? And then was able to parlay that into, getting called into a few U20 tournaments. And so
always playing up, always playing.
Yeah. So at that time, I was 19, getting called into the U20s, and then, but the thing is they only called in kind of the 18, 19-year-olds because they knew the World Cup cycle, those olders couldn't play. So they basically called it U20s, but it's usually like 18, 19-year-olds. And then it wasn't until the next year where you're really 20, 19. So, I was getting called into that, and I was kind of, to be honest, I was a bit of a fringe player on that team for a good 6 months, and then went to qualifying with them to try to qualify for the World Cup. We did. I was kind of an off and on starter. And then in the gap between the qualifying and then the actual World Cup, I went back to UCLA and just started playing with them, doing a lot of spring season stuff. It was right after my it was still going into my sophomore year, I think. And then I had a sophomore year, had a really good tournament. We went to the finals and lost in the finals. I had 7 goals in the season, but 5 of them were all in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So we made it all the way to the finals. Yeah, we made it all the way to the finals and lost in the snow to Santa Barbara in St. Louis. It was a weird game, and I still have buddies that
Castro do not know how to play in the snow.
And we beat them during the season, but we lost them in the finals, and it was gut wrenching at the time. But just that little tournament run, there was a lot of eyes watching a lot of those playoff games. So that was cool. The season ended, and then again, a perk from being at UCLA, you're close to where at the time the U23 national team, so the Olympic level squad, had a camp in LA at the time. They were playing at the StubHub Center, used to be the Home Depot Center. And I remember getting called in as a college. Our UCLA team was scrimmaging the U23s. They wanted to get some games in, bring in a top level team. So we scrimmaged them. I think we lost maybe 2-1 or something like that. But but I had a really good game. And so at the time, Bob Bradley, who ended up being the national team coach, but now is at LAFC, he was the head coach of the 23s, and he basically said that he wanted to bring me into that same camp that they were leaving to go to, I think it was Japan for a few games over there. And he was asked, can you get off of the school? A lot of these guys are professionals already. So I went to some of my teachers and I asked around, and I basically just had to jump on that opportunity. So I left school, missed maybe a week or so of school, but went with the U23s. This was before the U20 World Cup, and so the assistant on the U23s was the head coach of the U20. So now that fringe player that I was kind of started becoming like, well, he's. And then I went to that tournament with the U23s, and I had a good, tournament there with I was like starting some games for the U23s, and I almost scored a few goals, had an assist. So then that assistant coach was like, well, then he's a starter on the U20s if he's doing it on the 23s. So went into the World Cup in the U20s. Maybe a few months after that, it was the summer of 2007. Had a good U20 World Cup. Had a few nice assists to Freddie Adu, who at the time it was his, he had already broken out, but it was like his breakout kind of brought him to.
I had posters of Freddie. I'm like, oh man,
there you go.
Kobe Jones.
Yeah.
He was
he was the next. He was the supposed to be the LeBron and the Bryce Harper and the chosen one for soccer. His career didn't pan out that way, unfortunately. But at the time, he was 18 and scored some really cool goals against Poland and a few other clubs. So a few other countries, sorry, I should say. We beat Brazil in that tournament, and we beat a few other good countries. We made it to the quarterfinals in that tournament, and still to this day, people kind of talk about that team being one of the best U20 teams we've ever had. We had Michael Bradley, who obviously had an amazing national team career. Josie Altidore, who obviously is still in the news, and he's a great player for Toronto. So that whole thing was like one of the coolest experiences at my age and at that time. And so straight from there, I went to I had plans on returning to UCLA. MLS had offered something that off season, and I said, it's not like an amazing offer. And at the time I had that Italian citizenship, like you mentioned earlier. And I said, well, what, I might as well, maybe try to go overseas or something like that, Yeah.
You got
and if I don't, go to a few trials. And if I didn't make it, I always knew I could go back to UCLA for my junior year and enjoy it. But turns out I had a really good U20 World Cup, and I had basically a few teams in Europe offers straight from that World Cup, and ended up signing with Hannover 96 of the Bundesliga, and that was just a cool experience.
What was that like?
Yeah,
the culture of Germany. You're how old? At this time.
I was 20 at the time. Yeah, so it was hard. It was hard, but at this. It was like one of those things where I worked to be something my whole life, and it was like right there in front of me, everything, right? The top level, the money was coming, like everything kind of hit you all at once. And it was just like a really exciting moment, and it was that wave that I was riding, like I said. And then, you become a professional, and then you don't realize, that's when kind of the real work, starts, right? I mean, you fight for all these things as a youth player. You get your money, you get top level, and then you get there. You don't speak the language. You're number 25 out of 27 guys on the roster that he maybe trusts or to put you in. And you're coming from a place where you think you're the man. You've stepped into every situation your whole life and been the best that you could be, and one of the best in that moment. And then you just get thrown into a situation where you're not at the start.
It's also somewhat politics, right? They got the U.S. kid coming over here, and
for sure. And I was fortunate because I had Steve Cherundolo, who's actually from San Diego. He had been at Hanover for 8 years, and he actually still he just now got a job as the head coach for the Las Vegas Lights. So I'll be playing against him. But he was my teammate. For the 3 years I was there, and he kind of showed me the ropes. He kind of knew what it was like. He was 20 years old and went to Hanover as well, and probably had it harder off than I did because, at least I had a computer that had, AOL Instant Messenger and some Skype, was starting up, but he didn't have any. He had that dial-up, 56K modem or whatever. So exactly. So, he kind of taught me a lot and really helped me kind of just, not feel like everyone is different. He spoke English to me all the time. And honestly, yeah, it was tough not being able to speak the language and just
culture shock.
No, yeah, and they didn't really know, like, they didn't care or know like who I was or what I accomplished before. It was just like, yeah, the general manager saw me, liked me, gave me a contract, and I was just like another guy towards the end of the depth chart. And they wanted me to develop. I was still like that young guy, and they saw me, in the future. But pretty much it was up to me to take control of that, and that was difficult because I wasn't a professional yet. I wasn't, as I do now, making sure I get the right amount of sleep, making sure I eat the right things, making sure
matching the rehab.
Yeah. I mean, I was staying up
is
for sure.
Looking to tomorrow right now.
Yes, I mean, for sure. I was, staying up late, chatting with my friends from back home, because I missed it, and so I always said I wish I had gone, when I was 26, 27, where I had more of a perspective and a more of appreciation and what I would have known what it was like to be a pro, but that wasn't the case. I went at 20 to 23. I had a really bad injury. I think I played in 8 Bundesliga games, all off the bench. Wasn't like I was given this, amazing chance. In the middle or towards the beginning of my last year there, I injured my knee pretty badly, and I tore my LCL, ACL, a little bit of my meniscus, and that was really hard. That was really hard at a young age.
Just the rehab process, right?
And I would say even when I was 20, like I played a full national team game, and and then it was like from there I kind of peaked, and then I just couldn't get into many games. A lot of really good preseasons, and then the coach just didn't put me on the 18 because he wanted to put an experienced 30-year-old who has this many Bundesliga games, and I had only 2 or something like that. And so and I get it. Like a biggest thing a coach needs to do is kind of gain trust, right? His job's on the line. He wants to be able to put guys in that he can trust, and he didn't trust me yet because he it's like one of those things where they always say, we need someone with experience for a job, and it's like, well, how do I get experience if every job is saying they need someone with experience?
I can't even intern for it.
Exactly.
How do I get that experience?
Exactly. So it's kind of like that. Exactly. So I get injured in my last year, go through a pretty lengthy rehab, go back to Hanover when I'm starting to somewhat, I'm probably 6 months out. I go there. The coach had been fired. I had rehabbed in the U.S. a little bit, had my surgery in the U.S., went back, and it was almost like the coaching staff was completely new. They were almost like, who's this kid that just came back, from San Diego, because, they were going down this other path, and I was rehabbing in San Diego, and coach change and GM change, and it's kind of like, well, there's not
brand
much info on, brand new, exactly. So I go in, and basically straight away he's like, all right, we're going to send you to like some doctors in Hamburg to go rehab, go. So I basically wasn't around the team at that point, went to go rehab my knee. I went to a few doctors. The team doctor in Hanover was like, you'll never be able to play on your knee this loose. I'm like, I just had surgery. I just repaired it. And now you're saying like I won't be able to play on it. So you tell a 23-year-old, with the world and with this career in front of him, that he's never going to be able to play on his knee like that. It obviously is stuck with me today. I'm 34 and still playing, 11 years later. So, I just think that was a little unprofessional of him to say that to a young kid. But you hear about that stuff all the time. You hear about medical doctors and people saying, you can't do certain things, and then you just kind of prove them wrong. So yeah, I know I'm talking a lot about it, but
it's all good, man. I mean, it's the story of
it's the rundown. I mean,
adversity for
that was pretty much the first. Yeah, when I turned pro was pretty much the first time I had that adversity. So then I kind of
get that at a younger age. A lot of people kind of just like not
Yeah.
cruising, but
Yeah.
just excelling and just.
And I wish I would have, because I think I would have been able to maybe handle it differently. I didn't ever have like any type of adversity growing up. It was just kind of up, 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 and wasn't until then, when I hit a wall. But yeah, then I got injured, went to the MLS, played at Chivas USA for 6 months. Wasn't the best experience, but it was cool. It was cool. I went to the MLS and I got picked in a lottery in which I think 17 out of the 20, no, it was like 16 out of the 18 teams, put a bid to try and get me, that knowing who I was pretty much beforehand and stuff. And so got selected to go to Chivas USA, which LA at the time, I was super pumped being away from home. Now I'm up in LA. My parents can drive up to the games again. I go there, and obviously it just wasn't the environment that, I was looking for. The coach was expecting a little bit more from me, and I had only had my surgery 9 months ago, and he's like, oh, I was expecting to see a different type of player, and I'm like, well, I'm still like recovering, you know what I mean? Like, it's been 9 months from a serious knee injury, whereas now, a lot of the research is, a year if it's on an ACL, or back then it was a little bit more like 6 months and this and that. So that was hard. Played in 10 games, I think, at Chivas USA. Came back in mid-season that first year, played in 10 games. Then the off-season comes. I get traded to Portland Timbers, and that's kind of when another chapter of my career kind of took off. I really enjoyed my time at Portland. Played a good amount of games. I think it was like 70-something games for that club.
And the fan base.
Yeah, the fan base is amazing. I have a lot of love for the Portland Timbers. Them as a fan base really embraced me a lot. They still kind of know who I am. If I was to ever go back there, it was just kind of like one of those moments that, as a fan base and myself, they really connected to the way I played and who I was off the field and whatnot. And so
they appreciated the whole package.
Yeah. And they were, and I embraced it too. I loved the whole Portland environment, and I was there 3 years, and after that third year, I could have stayed for a fourth, but I think I just needed a fresh start at the time. The coach was Caleb Porter, who just won the MLS Cup with Columbus last year, who I have a great relationship with, but I didn't see a path to really playing as much as I wanted to, and so we just had a business type discussion. He said, yeah, I'll trade you, we'll be in touch in the off season, and if you'd like to come back or if you'd like to get traded. I think I just need a change of scenery, and he respected that. So Kansas City had just come off winning the MLS Cup. They were super interested, and I ended up going there for 1 year. Did okay. Still wish I could have done better. I think it was a tough year. It was one of those, like, a year after a team winning the Super Bowl or whatever, you kind of have like a letdown season. Nothing can kind of reach the expectations that the team did the year before. So yeah, then I get actually I was on a cruise ship with my wife for the next trade kind of, and that's another thing. People, if they're not athletes, people are like, oh, just trade him, but it's pretty crazy when you're the person getting traded, because it just changes your life completely. Like,
you're
you gotta
commodity. You're being dealt as if, like, oh, I have to find lodging, maybe a school for my kids. Like, we're uprooting ourselves. How much of a say did we have in this?
For sure, and having, like you just mentioned, having a family makes it even 10 times harder. If it's just you're single, yeah, you close out your rent and you're moving on. But once you got a wife and kids, it changes the whole ball game. So at the time I was married and my wife was pregnant in Kansas City. So we go on a cruise, and I get a text from my agent. Well, actually, so internet's like, I don't know, ridiculous on a cruise. So you don't really ever go on the internet when you're on a cruise. You're just kind of enjoying it. And I knew the expansion draft was coming up. And so I just went on for fun, like, oh, maybe I just want to see who got taken in the expansion draft, right? I think it was New York City FC and, who was the other team? I can't remember the other club that came in with New York City FC, but I get selected by New York City FC with like the 9th pick out of 10, right? And and I like see it, and I just like, oh, cool, like New York, like really cool. I get to experience New York. That'll be awesome, you know. And I remember walking by my wife, and she's laying out by the pool, and my whole family went on this cruise,
New
and I was like,
York.
yeah, I was like, hey, what do you think about New York? You know, super pumped. And then literally like I get a text, you know, from my agent. Literally get a text from my agent, like not even where I was going, but just like you got traded. And I was like, wait, from New York I got traded? Like what? I haven't even like had a second to think that I was going there. I literally thought I was going there for 30 minutes, you know? And he didn't message me back, and I'm just like, you know, there's a show going on in the theater, so I'm walking there with my family, like, oh, what's next, you know?
Right.
Finally, I get the email, and he goes, you got traded to the other New York team, New York Red Bulls, and I was like, oh, well, at least, you know, it's still like
Old New
I can still
York.
have that thought process. Yeah, it's still New York. It's New Jersey, but it's you know New York, you know, so New Jersey, New York. So
That's
yeah, was really excited to go there. The coach literally got released probably like 2 weeks after I go there. So I wasn't even there yet when the coach got fired, and then they brought in Jesse Marsh, who um, has gone on to be one of the best U.S. coaches currently in soccer. But I played there for 3 years at Red Bull, and I would say it was my three most enjoyable and three most successful years as a player. You know, I was 26 to 29 years old. You could say the prime. I moved positions to right back. I was always a winger before, and I moved to right back, and it kind of unlocked a different part of my game that I didn't really know existed. Yeah, and I just really, we were successful that first year. We won Supporter Shield, which means we had the most points in the league. Which in most leagues in Europe, that's who the champion is. But because we want to Americanize soccer, we do the playoffs and we do the MLS Cup and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, so I get it. But yeah, so that first year was really cool experience. We won. The second year, we still were. I think we won the West, or that we won the East, but we didn't win Supporter Shield. And then the next year we were good again. So like we had a really good run. We went to the Open Cup finals my last year and lost in the finals to my old team in Kansas City. So, but that whole experience was the 3 years there. I really enjoyed it. And Jesse was, the best coach I've ever had. And I can see him one day coaching our full national team to a World Cup. He probably could have already if he wasn't so focused on really making it, in Europe, which right now he's at Red Bull Salzburg, which is in Austria Bundesliga, and they won last year, and he was the assistant for the German one, and then went to become the head coach. So I think they have plans, to make him part of the Red Bull. He's had rumors to go to Dortmund, which is another big club in Europe. So and I keep in touch with him. He's the ultimate. He's a great player manager, but also tactically has it on lockdown. Usually you get one of the two, or a little bit of one and a little bit of the other, but he's just master class on both. So
we need to try and get him back for
yeah, no, he will. I think like I said, right now he's trying to build his trade to become a top club manager in Europe, which I respect. And Berhalter's a good coach too. I have belief in him. So one day. But yeah, and then I went to become a free agent, which was also a new experience. Most soccer players in the MLS, you have to have 8 years of experience in the league, at least at the time. I don't know if they've changed that, but you had to have 8 years as professional, and you had to be at least 30 years old or 28 years old, I believe. So I was 30 and I had 8 years. So it was like I ticked both boxes, and that was a little bit of a hard experience too. You think, with all your experience, teams are just going to come calling. And, once you hit 30 years old, I think teams start looking at you a little bit differently. And so finally, I think even a week after preseason started, Atlanta called and was like, we want to sign you. Yeah, we'll give you this much, which I was like, okay, great. This is what I was looking for. It was just kind of an easy transaction, almost like, we were trying to sign you from the start. And I was like, well, I've been waiting here. So that it was kind of strange. And then signed there, had Tata Martino as our head coach, who now is the Mexican national team head coach.
Yes.
And he just kind of reminded me of one of my uncles, super old fashioned, very cultured, from Argentina, who they have a lot of similarities with the Italian culture. And so, he was
a little rough maybe, but one of
yeah,
the players
yeah.
that gets the most out of his play.
Yeah, a little bit laid back, but he just had that like presence that commanded so much respect for kind of. He was a Barcelona head coach for a little bit, and so guys just respected the hell out of him, and I think players wanted to play for him, and and he saw the game. I mean, tactically we were great, but the way he saw the game and the adjustments he would make at halftime was better than I've ever seen. Like he could just see what a team was doing in the first half, come in and be like, this is what they're doing, do this, and we'll be fine. And then we would do it, and it'd be amazing. So that was, and like, dude, I've been blessed to have all good fan bases I played for. When I went to Atlanta, the fan base was incredible. They sell out where the Falcons play, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Like
they're the bigger draw in Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just gonna say. Yeah, the bigger draw than the Falcons, which a lot of people in the U.S. don't realize because a lot of people go off of the TV deals and what the viewership on TVs, which I completely understand and agree with. But
run.
Yeah, but really, from an attendance standpoint in the MLS, it's top. I think it's just under actually football for top attendance. So, and it's getting close to that. So, that was like a really cool team to play for. We won MLS Cup that year. Unfortunately, I got hurt in July that year and had some problems with more injuries. Like I've always had, I didn't mention that I had torn my ACL again in Portland. And so I was constantly kind of coming back from these long-term injuries and kept going and kept plugging away and kept grinding through a lot of these years. And finally we won in MLS Cup in Atlanta. Had a few interests after that, but I was coming off an injury and my knee actually didn't feel right. They repaired my meniscus, but it just didn't feel good. And I had a few places that said, hey, why don't you come in to preseason? And this is where a little bit not my ego, but like I was like, I'm 31 at the time. Like you guys have seen me in 9 years in this league. I think you kind of know who I am enough to make a decision now. And some teams did want to, and but it was also I had 3 kids by that time in Atlanta, and I was like, well, do I just like upend the family again, go to some city like Seattle or Minnesota and live in a place, whatever, like for another year and then have to start all over again?
Real. That's all you have to think about. Those are decisions.
Yeah, and so that played into it, and at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to kind of just move on and maybe try something different. So, funny enough, my wife's family's from Las Vegas, so I basically was like, okay, I'm done. I'm hanging them up. I don't want to. I always loved real estate. I had some investment properties in San Diego that kind of led into my passion with it, and so I was like, maybe I'll just dabble in that and become a real estate agent in Las Vegas. It's easier to with no job to start a life somewhere like Vegas than in San Diego where the houses are, $600,000-700,000, So we go there and we get a house and we're settling down in Vegas, and I'm going through the realtor tests and whatnot, and I'm making cold calls sometimes once I get my license, and I just think about it back then. I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, you go from like playing in the Bundesliga. Yeah, you go from playing like the Bundesliga to like making these like cold calls where people are cussing you out and just like, and then you just like have this like epiphany, like, well, how did I get here? Yeah, absolutely. So, I just kind of had one of those moments, and basically from there, literally like a week after that, Landon messaged me on Twitter and was like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. And then the whole San Diego Loyal came up. He told me about it. Said, we're not sure if we're going to start this year or next year, but we want you to be a part of it regardless. And I was just totally on board at that point. I was like, I already felt like I made a weird decision going into real estate agents or to become a real estate agent. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can. My body. So at that time, that repair that I had a hunch didn't feel right. It wasn't right. It never repaired and actually retore. And so what happened was they just removed my meniscus, which is what I've done in the past, and felt a million times better. It's not great for the knee long term, but it's a shorter recovery, and now it's perfectly fine. And so had that done, and so my body was starting to feel good. And then he gave me that call, and I was like, yeah, I'm all for it. cannot wait, and just kind of spiraled from there, and knew, I was still doing real estate, but at the time I was like, gosh, I know like in 5 months I'm going to be playing soccer again. So, what's the goal here? Like, and so I was like kind of training on my own in the morning, but then going into the office, and it sucked because when I do things, I like to be like full, like all in, I'm not going to do something kind of, but at the time,
but get the results. Right.
Exactly. So at the time I was like, yeah, and all these colleagues, and I didn't want to say anything at the time, but they're like, oh yeah, you just got to put in the work, like 6 months they'll come back to you. And I'm just like, well, I don't really have that much time to just get all these people ready for me for 6 months, because I'll probably be gone in 6 months. So it's kind of weird. It was like a weird time that I was just kind of like wasting time trying to get fit, but at the same time doing something else. So and then came to San Diego, and it's been so cool to be able to play for my hometown.
And I mean, that just brings us to, really the crux of this conversation. But the backstory is so important because it shows not only those chapters of like early success, national team, and getting, a little taste of the world in abroad, and then, kind of journeying through all these great clubs here stateside.
Yeah.
But then it brings you to, with all those memories, everything you've accumulated and learned about yourself, brings you to Landon and the Loyal.
Yeah.
And so just by, casual a soccer fan here in town, and, seeing what the vision was, with their stadium, and Qualcomm, and, maybe the Chargers leaving, longtime Padre, I've been waiting for a soccer team to be here that we can call our own. And so when we saw the vision, coming together, online and social media, my question to you, because I feel like everyone can have their own take, but what would you say if there's, I guess, maybe a term, or, loyal is obviously apparent, right? Loyal to the soul. But what would you say is what embodies what you guys are and what you, I guess, aspire to be here in town?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to just put it in one word, right? Because I think San Diego Loyal kind of describes like what you just said, right? So we're not going anywhere. I think our owner has stated that, San Diego, and he has the background of San Diego sports. So he's lived just like, a lot of our San Diego fans, Padre fans, Charger fans. He's lived through a lot of agony, the Chargers leaving. And part of the Loyal, that was actually thought of because of, it was actually the fans kind of gave their feedback, and that word was the word that just kept popping up. And it was a little strange, right, when you first heard it, and now it just kind of feels natural, at least to me it does. I think San Diego fans want somebody to, like you just said, to call their own. And we also want to just like, almost like a cult following. Like we want to just have, devoted fans, almost like how Timbers fans are. We want to be super active in the community. That's a given. And I think we've kind of shown that a little bit through our actions. And we also want to stand for more than just soccer, right? And again, I think our actions in our games have shown that. With the playoffs on the line, one of our players who's openly gay was called a homophobic slur on the field, and the week prior, one of our players was called a racial slur on the field, and so and we didn't know at that time. So as a club, we said, had we known he said that, we would have demanded more and maybe walked off the field, and we don't stand for that. And then fate has it, right? A player gets called a homophobic slur a week later. So we had to stand by our actions for sure. Like we had to do something, and enough wasn't being done by that player or the other coaching staff. So as a team, we decided that we weren't going to continue the match as long as this player was still on the field, and their coach and the referees wouldn't take him off. And you hear a lot of people like, oh, don't be crybabies, just go on. There's name calling, but this is different, right? This is attacking someone on a different level. And so you wouldn't do that out in public. So you don't do it on a soccer field. Like, we're still human beings. So, we stood for that. And I think that moment, I think, kind of embodies us as a team, and who we are, going forward. And great job from our team. But also, it's nice to have an owner and a coach who completely, and I mean completely, backs you up in a situation like that, and isn't, with the playoffs on the line, isn't like, no guys, let's do this. Like, no, like, they had our backs completely and said, this is what we need to do. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think, given the year that it was, the summer that it was across the country, right? We're seeing just rampant racial strife. And that's how you can separate yourself. The culture that you build. And look, he's not a nobody. It's Landon Donovan, right? The most storied soccer player in U.S. history.
Yep.
There's no ego there. It's no, look, we're here. We're not just going to, put, Black Lives Matter in our jerseys. We're going to be about action. And if that means we're not even going to address this game as if we even played, right? We don't want to stand. We don't want to be a part of anything that makes it look like we participated in that. And that's where the culture is shifting. And I just think it was so, off the bat, it's going to be foreign to people that don't understand and say, wait, so they just ended, they just walked off, what else happened? But when you look at it in context and you have that foresight, like, we're changing soccer and we're changing it here. What side do you want to stand for? I couldn't be more proud to be a fan. And like, that's what we want to root for, is
for sure.
Just, beat our team on the field, but we don't need to do that, especially how divided, this past year was. I think I remember watching or reading a quote on your Soccer Soup Instagram of a conversation that you had with DeAndre Yedlin.
Yeah.
He said something to the effect of, I'm not ready to put the U.S. national jersey on until we start seeing the respect and just equality across, our Black and brown neighbors and friends and community members. And so, given the stance that the Loyal have, in this community, I guess my question to you was, do you feel that maybe this MLS or the global soccer community is still doing enough to combat that, the racism, the virus that is racism?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for sure they could do more, right? I mean, I think FIFA as an organization has dealt with, some racial slurs being used in different countries all the time, like in Spain and Italy, and whether it be bananas getting thrown on the field and players walking off. Yeah, and so there definitely needs to be more for them to catch up. But for something like what we did, I can speak for ourselves. What we did kind of, it may or may not have, sparked some other teams. I think recently, in the span of 6 months, there's been a few other instances where teams have walked off the field or shown kind of unity for one of the players that was getting racially abused or whatnot. So, and like I said, maybe they did it because they saw us do it. Maybe they didn't. But either way, I think what we're doing can only help the issue, and it needs to be addressed for sure, on a global level, absolutely, and hopefully, our little team in the USL Championship and the US can help kind of spark that.
I go back to, I think I heard it, maybe a few weeks back, but a really good quote that it's kind of stuck with me for this exact situation. I mean, San Diego, we don't get much rain, right? But you never know which raindrop starts the flood. And this is the brilliance of social media and how connected we are. One thing goes viral and you get to see, okay, that's where San Diego's at. where are we at? What do we say we stand for, and how can we back up that action? So just super kudos, man, and just being a captain on a team that stands with every single one of your players and friends at the end of the day. It's just really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, it is. I'm proud, to be a part of it. And, we have a really good, team chemistry within our locker room that, can't be matched with most other teams that I've played on, which is really exciting. And like I said, when you have owners that can, and coaches who are humble and, who see the world, in a good way, it just makes our job so much, easier, and gives us so much more courage to kind of do the things that you said, maybe foreign at the time, but, don't feel so foreign within our team.
Yes. Yeah, man. And so I'm being mindful of the time. We're almost at time, but, I wanted to kind of pose one last question. I think it just loops everything together, right? Is the loyal and your journey and your family, the family aspect. You said father of 3, and I think a little man on the way.
Yeah. Yep. Finally, I think I'd been trying to get a little man this whole time, but no, dude, I love my 3 girls, and I would have been happy with a 4th. They're all daddy's girls, and love them to death. But I think I'm more excited once I found out I was having one, that I didn't kind of realize, how badly I wanted one. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah. Well, just exactly. I mean, on that note, as somebody who is raising a family, raising daughters or a son that'll maybe grow up playing sports, what would you say, to our viewers, listening in and watching, on the importance of, using your platform? If you're growing up, if you're San Diego, middle schooler or high school, or even, college age, early 20s, about using your platform to speak out on issues that you think will benefit your community, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say if you have a platform, use it, because, I mean, what other way in life, you may or may not have another opportunity to have a platform. I mean, who knows, 20 years from now, no one's going to really care who Sal Zizzo is on Twitter anymore, right? So, I mean, who knows, right? So while you have it, I mean, speak your mind, right? I mean, have your opinions, and whatever they may be, if you feel like it's the right thing to do, then go for it. I would say as a young person, be compassionate, in the sense that, always think about what, the other person is probably going through. Like, for example, it was never our club's intent, or I think anyone's personal intent, to ruin, anyone's life, for saying a racial slur or a homophobic slur. I mean, I think part of what the Loyal did, actually, and I don't know if this is public, but I think they've spoken on it a little bit, was we actually wrote a letter to the USL and demanded, or not demanded, but asked for them to change the ruling on some of these things. Whereas, if he says a racial slur, normally it's like, whatever, a 3-game suspension, like that's like the minimum, and then usually the team will like cut the player and just be done with him, and that's not really kind of what the club wants, or what we think is right. We almost want to, like, well, let's keep the player, force you to keep the player, and actually educate him, and have him learn, what he did and why he did was wrong, and maybe even go to classes and just kind of maybe take a different approach. I think nowadays there's a little bit too much, cancel culture, and just like, let's just shun this person.
Write them off as
write them off. And I think
things.
And I think you just need to take a step back and have a little perspective, and nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect in life, but I think you need to help people have that, like I said, have that compassion, and maybe see, sometimes things get blurted out, and that's no excuse, but that's maybe just his upbringing. This kid was from Jamaica when he said the racial slur, and that's totally inexcusable. But let's educate him as to why what he said, really hurt him, and why he shouldn't say it going forward. And, maybe he says it with his buddies back home, but maybe he needs to stop doing that. And maybe when his friends' buddies say it back home, maybe he can step up and say something, and it's like a tumbleweed, and maybe it pass it on effect. And so, like I said, have a compassion and try to help the person and understand, and let's grow us instead of just kicking people to the curb and just say, okay, you're done, let's move on, and you're out of society because you did one thing wrong. I think that's not the way to go about it in any situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. And I think it's such a teachable moment, right? Like, how have we kind of been doing things, as I'm looking at us as a country, right? The incarceral system for petty, whatever charge, you lock them up with these extraordinary, sentences, when in reality, if it's an issue, it's a rehab issue. It's let's treat the issue. And I think it just runs parallels with that kind of thinking. It's like, if we look at San Diego,
let's be a community,
so many people that, do you want to not be able to, feel comfortable talking to your neighbor just because, there are disagreements? Well, how do we just break through that and get to the core of, hey, we're all trying to, maybe it's just an education, thing. So that's awesome, man.
Let's be a community, let's not just be kick him to the curb, and let's start creating our own, little tribes. Let's be more of all one, I think. And that's why I was actually really proud that we did that as a team, because it's not about ruining this guy's life, because he made a mistake in that moment. And even he even talked he even apologized to the player, and they had a good chat, individually. And I think that's the best way to approach it. No one wants to ruin this kid's life, and who's a promising player getting called into the Jamaican national team. No one wants to ruin this player to where he can never play soccer again, right? I mean, we want to educate him. Yeah. I mean, you want to educate him, and he can. He's probably going through a lot of pain. I know he was getting death threats, on Twitter, and that's never something you want to have happen from a moment like that. But I like how we put that in the letter, that the team has to keep them and has to help educate him and move on.
Huge. Leading by example.
Yeah, well, I think that's the best way to do it. Yep.
Wow. Well, look, man, I'm looking at the clock right now, and it's telling me we're a little bit over, and I completely get it if we can close out here. However, before I let you go, I kind of lied. I do have kind of a surprise.
Okay.
So before I let you go, I'm just wondering if you can stay on for an extra maybe 60 seconds, because I do know of something called 60 with Sal in 60.
Yeah.
But have you played a minute with Michael?
I have not, but is this something similar?
It's fairly the same concept.
Okay.
This or that type scenario.
All right. I've heard of that.
If you're cool with it, we can do kind of San Diego edition.
Let's do it.
Let me just pull up my timer real quick. And you got to choose one, right? Isn't that just the only rule?
That's pretty simple. Yeah, I wonder if they'll be difficult, but yeah, let's hear it. Is it going to be like California burrito or something? I don't know. We'll see.
It's like you are looking at my screen right now. All right. Well, I got the timer ready to go, and you let me know when you're ready, and I'll tell you when.
I'm good. Let's go.
Okay. Starting now. Stone or 394?
Stone.
Portland or Kansas City?
Portland.
Sicilian pizza or thin crust?
Sicilian.
FaceTime or text?
Text.
Instagram or Twitter?
Twitter.
Carne asada fries or Cali burrito?
California burrito.
Pacific Beach or Ocean Beach?
Pacific.
Coffee or Red Bull?
Coffee.
Olympics or World Cup?
World Cup.
First Take or Top 10?
Top 10.
Netflix or HBO?
HBO.
Music or podcast?
Podcast.
LeBron or MJ?
MJ.
J. Cole or Drake?
Drake.
Ice cream or froyo?
Froyo.
Big Bear or Snow Summit?
Big Bear.
Hotel or Airbnb?
Airbnb.
Sushi or Korean barbecue?
Sushi.
Sports bar or dive bar?
Sports.
And that's time.
Love it. I love it. I actually never got to do it myself. I was always the one.
It's
actually harder. It's actually harder on your end, huh? Because you're like, oh no, like I can't stumble on the words. Yeah, exactly.
And you've always had somebody keeping track, right?
Yep, and you get the ultra competitive athlete on the other side who wants to like beat everyone. So if you mumble on a word, you're like, or like stumble on a word, he's like, oh no, it's your fault I didn't win. So
well, you knocked him out, man. I had to throw a little bit of San Diego stuff, but
for sure
you killed it, man. I think you hit 20, and just overall, man, this was a dope conversation. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I know your schedule's super busy, gearing up for this season. So, again, just thank you for your time, for coming on to the All-Star Advocacy Podcast. And I cannot wait to, be able to, go to these live games and root you guys on.
We'll keep in touch. You let me know when if you want to come to any games, if you don't have tickets or whatnot. I think I may know a few people.
You know the guy.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me on, dude. Anytime that you need me to come on, I liked our conversation as well. So, in the future, if you'd like to have me on again, I'm down.
Awesome, man. Sounds great.
All right, Michael. Take care.
You take care.
See you guys. Bye.
All right, brother.
Later, man.